Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juice, and today we are going to be talking about flying in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to say before I really dive into this topic is that in my personal opinion, there is nothing in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that is too powerful in the game. There's nothing that can't be figured out with just a little bit of thought and careful planning in order to challenge your players. To me, it's really important that you let your players feel powerful and heroic, but occasionally, especially if they're starting to get cocky at the table, you kind of got to smack them down a little bit and just show them who's boss. I'm not saying be adversarial. I'm just saying to show them that while yes, they are powerful and they can do some great things, you as the dungeon master can always be a little bit tougher on them than they give you credit for. So today's video is sponsored by 3D Prints by Vic. So I want to show you guys some of these 3D prints. This one in particular inspired this video. I am going to end up having this painted up as a really awesome bad guy. These are all hands for wings. It's also got hands coming out of this stone for the base, holding this stone up. You can just set it up on there. You could probably use this as like a fallen god. Anyways, he has an Etsy store. He's also on Instagram. Some amazing 3D prints over there. This one just happens to be one of the few that I got and happens to be my favorite. They also have these really cool twig lights. The detail's amazing. They're very durable. And they're just really awesome miniatures. There's also this like spiritual bear, kind of like a nature god of some sort. It's got some elk coming out here. It's got these whirling like spirits going around it. And then it's, basically a bear with huge antlers, which is just awesome. And to give you an idea of how big it is compared to the twig blights, I mean, it's twice the height of it, maybe 3 times the height. So this is a really cool miniature as well. He also throw in this voluptuous rogue, as I'll call her. She's very curvy. She's holding some keys and a dagger. This is a really cool one too. My wife actually liked this one, and who knows, maybe I can convince her to play a rogue again. That used to be her favorite class. So go check out 3D Prints by Vic. Link is in the description. So why might flying pose a problem for some people's games? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one is they can bypass obstacles or traps. If you're running a game that takes place in the outside woods or mountains or things like that, they can basically fly around a lot. They can scout really far ahead. This isn't really a problem, except it removes some of the elements of surprise. It removes some of the other things you might do, such as setting traps or have the players get ambushed. It just removes a lot of different things that you can do to the players. But again, not a huge problem, and we'll get into some of the reasons why here in a little bit. The combination of a flying character who can also do ranged attacks can pose a huge problem in combat. They'll have things like Eldritch Blast, where they can shoot over 100 feet away without a penalty. A longbow can also shoot very far away, again, without a penalty. So again, this might cause problems in your combats, especially, again, if you're throwing enemies at those players that don't have a way to do ranged attacks. A lot of animals, aren't going to be able to do that. Even flying creatures, if they don't have a flying speed better than that player, then they're not going to be able to catch up to them. And that kind of goes into the third thing, really, is that most monsters do not have ranged attacks. If you're using regular monsters and you're not using humanoids or intelligent creatures, then they're going to have a hard time dealing with flying characters. They're basically just sitting ducks. They're just going to sit there and get picked off. They can probably attack the other players in the party, but they're not going to be able to attack that flying character with ranged attacks. I want to look at a couple things. I want to look at the fly spell. I also want to look at an Aarakocra. Those are the 2 primary ways players are going to be flying. There's magic items like a magic carpet and some other ways magically to fly. But those 2, the fly spell and again, playing a character race that allows you to fly, are the 2 primary ways. So the fly spell, I have it written down here, is a 3rd level transmutation. It's 1 action. It's a touch spell. requires verbal, semantic, and material components. The duration is 10 minutes, but requires concentration. And that part's key, and that's why we'll get into that here in a second. The speed is 60 foot, so again, you're going to be able to outfly most creatures even with the flying skill. And again, if it ends, the target will fall. So if concentration is broken and that character that's flying is really high up, they will fall and take the fall damage of 1d6 per 10 feet. So again, very, very important. Because it also has the concentration feature on there, you're not going to be able to stack it with invisibility from the same spellcaster. Now, if you have two spellcasters in your party, one casts fly on a player, the other one casts invisibility on them, well, now that person will be invisible and able to fly. Now, the wizard, if they cast it on themselves and they get hit, they might lose their concentration. They're not going to be invisible unless somebody casts invisibility on them. So really the best tactic if they're trying to optimize this is to cast fly on somebody else and then hide. And have another character, if they can, cast invisibility on that same character and also hide so that those two things don't go away. Any smart creature is probably going to be able to identify if that character that's flying is an Aarakocra or if they've possibly cast the spell. Now, we've kind of identified the spell, but the Aarakocra can fly 50 feet, and there are some negatives to why, the Aarakocra isn't as OP as some people might think. Their walking speed is only 25 feet rather than 30. They can't wear medium or heavy armor if they want to fly. They also don't get a lot of features from their race. So again, there are a lot of downsides for the fact that they have fly. So the easiest way to handle flying characters is while they are flying, just attack them. If you have characters that can do ranged attacks, have them attack the flying characters. That is going to be the easiest way. Most characters flying are going to be targets. They're going to end up being the first thing that the enemy sees. And so they should also be the first ones attacked. The reason I say this is because most flying characters are going to go ahead. Basically, it's like splitting the party. While the party still might see the flying character, they're also going to be really far back. So that flying character, once they start getting hit, they're going to start either retreating or they're going to come down and attack. Or maybe they're going to fly further up to get further away and still attack the enemies there. So it's going to force the players to make a tactical decision right away. Now, if the enemies are smart, they're going to know if that one that's flying was a spellcaster, because of how they dress, maybe if they have certain weapons or not. Many factors can lead to them to make that assumption. If it is the character that casts a spell, again, they might lose concentration while flying. If they are not the one that casts the spell, they don't have to worry about that, but the enemies are still going to shoot them until either that character dies, or they might find the spellcaster and attack them. If they see the spellcaster who cast fly, they should probably target the spellcaster. Again, this is smart enemies. Not smart enemies, just going to attack the first thing they can. If the not smart enemies, say they're, creatures of some sort, animals of some sort, if they're getting attacked, well, they should probably retreat if they think that it's volatile and they can't overcome it. Most creatures have a very strong fight or flight response, and if they feel like the odds are against them, they will run. Animals are not stupid, so I would definitely apply that in this situation. Also, a lot of creatures, it's not hard to give them the ability for ranged attacks. If you're dealing with some kind of an animal, maybe it's not a normal animal. Maybe it can shoot its quills. Maybe it has some kind of an acid spit. If they're fighting spiders, for example, maybe they can shoot their webbing, or maybe they can shoot poison at range. And maybe not the range of like hundreds of feet or anything, but 30, 40, 50, 60 feet maybe they could do that. And I don't think this is something you should do all the time. You should not always be going against your players to one-up them and show them how powerful you are as the DM. But you should definitely do this if your players are always using the same tactics. Force the players to start thinking about using different tactics every once in a while. If the characters are flying around mountains or places that are extremely dangerous where there might be creatures like a rock or dragons or manticores or chimeras. Have those things attack the flying character while they're up in the air. It's basically a split party situation. And so you got most of the party on the ground, but you have this one flying in the air, or maybe two in the air, and you have these flying creatures attacking it. If you're playing Tomb of Annihilation, you might have Terrafolk attack them in a swarm. You might have Sturges come out and start attacking the one flying character. Things like that. If you have characters that are bypassing a lot of obstacles with the fly spell, maybe they're one character's taking the other characters across a chasm, well, create a time-sensitive situation where they're being attacked, and also look up the encumbrance rules before the session. Because if this character can't wear medium or heavy armor to fly, and now they're trying to carry somebody who's really heavy, use encumbrance rules against them. It might slow their speed down. Now to fly over that 50-foot chasm might take 2 or 3 turns each time. They're going to have to start thinking again, well, do we want to try to get everyone over, or are we going to get rid of this problem we're having right now? Things like that. Maybe even think to enforce exhaustion from carrying heavy people over, a chasm like that. Things like that can really make them think about how they're using their abilities and still keep them challenged without, really stacking the odds against them and making it extremely deadly. It's challenging, but not too much so. Set your adventures in places that are not advantageous to a flying creature. Dungeons, caverns where most of them aren't extremely tall. You can set it inside of buildings, things like that. Underwater, a flying character has no benefits if they need to go underwater. So again, that can be a huge neutralizer. Or even on the water, where the thing they need to do is under the water, and maybe they're in a boat, but they need to get down there. Again, they're going to be useless in that situation. And don't do this all the time, but again, mix it up. Keep them thinking, keep them switching up their tactics. It's going to make the game a lot more fun. The last one, that's probably the easiest, is if you have spellcaster enemies, use Earthbind. This will work against the Aarakocra. It'll work against anyone with a fly spell on them. You can also use things like Dispel Magic and stuff like that to also get rid of the flying spell. Earthbind is a 2nd level transmutation spell, so a 4th level character could use this. It's one action. It works for up to 300 feet, which is huge. It's only a verbal component. The duration is concentration for 1 minute. So they'd be able to keep that flying character grounded for at least a minute with concentration. Now again, the players can always attack the character who cast Earthbind to remove that. And then that character can fly again. So it's not like this overpowered spell against flying characters, because there is a way to, combat against it. So it's this chess match between the players and you as the dungeon master. Now, if it works, it's going to be a strength save against the flying character. So a lot of characters like Aarakocras might not have a strong strength score. And it's going to be, whatever their strength save is against the spell save DC. So, your Aarakocra, say they have a 12, that's a +1. They don't have strength as a proficient save. So they're going to have a +1 on their roll. More often than not, they will fail the save. The most spellcasters, I think, start, real weak ones are like a 13 for a DC, maybe a 12 for a DC. So 50% of the time, that Aarakocra is probably going to fail in that instance. If they have a higher strength score, then it's not going to be as much of a problem. If it starts happening, the thing to remember, it does not make them just fall out of the sky. They will descend safely at 60 feet per round. So if they're flying 200 feet up, they're going to come down 60 feet every round. And so really, they are, again, a sitting duck as they come down to the ground slowly. They're not going to go double movement down or anything like that. They can't control it. They are basically being pulled down at a set speed. So for a couple rounds, you're going to be able to attack that character. In my opinion, that's a great spell to challenge that party with. And I kind of like that idea because, again, when you're a flying character, you really are putting yourself out there. You are a target. And as a DM, I think if you play it smart, you're going to make them think twice about flying all the time. They're not going to do it all the time. Yeah, they're going to do it to bypass certain obstacles. They're probably going to use it in combat sometimes, especially if they're a warlock and they have Eldritch Blast or something. Or maybe they're a sorcerer. But again, I really think you can level out the spell and still challenge your party if flying is posing a problem to you. So with that, I hope this helped you. Whether you're a player or DM, you can take some of these tricks and use them in your games to make it more fun. Maybe you have a DM who throws a lot of flying creatures at you. Again, go get the Earthbind spell. Target them. Target the flying creature. Start thinking about different tactics. If there's anything you think I missed, maybe certain spells or tactics, or maybe even a rule, please comment below with what I missed, or maybe something that you have tried that's worked really well. My goal for videos like this is to just help you guys have more fun at the table. Again, don't just be a jerk and use these things to counter your players all the time. Let them feel powerful. Let them use their abilities. Only use these things occasionally, especially if they're abusing it and taking away spotlight from other players, and force them to switch their tactics up then. Those are just my thoughts. Again, love to hear yours in the comments below. This was Master the Game. I am Juce. Game on.